Hey everybody, it's Friday. I'm so excited to see you guys again. I do look forward every week to being here and having this real-time interaction with you guys. The question of the day, go ahead and answer that. Have you ever been in the position to prepare for an electronic trial? And actually, I'm still calling it electronic trial. I might not even be calling it the right thing. We'll check with Mike in a second. But we used to call them electronic courtrooms and electronic trials. It might just be called a trial now. We'll find out. That's question of the day. Have you had the opportunity to prepare for an electronic trial? Not just sitting in a hot seat or anything like that, but just to help attorneys get ready for, because it's a whole different bailiwick, so to speak. I do want to give a shout out to my former Georgetown paralegal student, Andy Grindstaff, because he gave me this hat. Andy is starting law school at William & Mary this fall, and he was one of my students that stood out as a person who should not be a paralegal. He should be in lit support. So as soon as he graduated, I helped him find a job in litigation support, and he's been doing it for a few years, and now he's going to go to law school and then probably do e-discovery work when he gets out of law school. So that's pretty cool. I'm really proud of you, Andy, and I wanted to give you a shout out, and I wanted to thank you for the hat. And also, I want to let you know that because Andy has left, there's a vacancy at the company that he worked at. It's a service provider. It's in Virginia, and that hiring manager has hired 5 of my previous students. So if you are in the DC area and you're a newbie and you're looking for a project manager role, give me a shout out and contact me and let me know, and let's see if we can get you in line for the interviews. Okay. Let's see here. So I put a question in the comments, and wow, Ruth is joining us from the Virgin Islands. I wish I was with you, Ruth. I went to the Virgin Islands once. It was a wonderful trip. The BA Zone, which is my friend Kathleen, is on YouTube saying hello. Sarah's answering my question, which is Chicago. Sarah, I'm curious if you know about Mike already since he's in Chicago. Nicole, good to see you today. Okay, here we go. From Fairlawn, New Jersey. Thank you for answering my question, Kathleen. B, good to see you from Minneapolis. And Nicole is always prompt in answering the question of the day. She has not had the opportunity to prepare for an electronic trial. Ava is joining us from Florida. Good to see you here. Kathleen. Factoid, my first husband graduated from William & Mary, so we used to go down there for the fall homecomings, so I'm very familiar with that school. Okay. Sarah's saying, I just call it preparing for trial. Got it. Ruth is saying she has not. And Sarah's confirming that she doesn't know Mike. B is saying she's prepared for many. Yes, that's good. Good. All right, Jennifer, good to see you, is coming from Missouri. And Kay is back from LA. Good to see you, Kay. All right, so the question of the day, let me move this out of your way. If you're just joining us, is have you had the opportunity to prepare for an electronic trial? So back in the day when I was learning litigation support, I definitely had to learn it, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that today because I'm curious. I haven't had to do it in a while. I went a different direction, so I really haven't helped people with trials in a long time. So I'm curious to learn from Mike today what's changed since the last time I had to figure it out for myself and help my legal teams. Paula is saying hello from Salt Lake City. And Kay, we looked at doing an electronic file, but the case settled. Trial, I think you meant, but the case settled. Oh, bummer, Kay. And let's see, Paula's following up. Never prepared for an electronic trial. Okay, cool. So I'm hoping that those of you that have done it might learn something, but more importantly, if you haven't done it, you'll definitely learn something today. So let's go ahead and get the show started. Welcome to the Legal Tech Mastery Show. My name is Amy Bowser-Rollins, and in this show we talk about legal technology, but we also talk about legal technology careers. And one of the careers that you can, what I call, niche down into, because it's very specific, is doing trial support. And it takes a lot of, you have to be able to handle stress well. And I have some paralegal friends that love going to trial and preparing for trial, but some of them aren't even doing electronic trials, which is adding a whole other layer of technology. So let's go ahead and say hi to my guest, Mike.
Hi, how are you doing?
Hi, Mike. Glad you said yes. I'm so excited to have you here because you have knowledge that I can't share. So we need you to help teach us what you've been doing with trials. Can you start out by telling us about your legal career so far and just in general?
Sure. So I have been working as a trial consultant for the past 10 years now. Before that, I went to law school. And before law school, I was working in my prior life as a cell biologist in St. Louis. So a completely different career path. I thought I would initially go to law school to become a patent attorney and just kind of prosecute patents all day and never ever set foot in a courtroom. But third year of law school, I took my first, or going second to third year in law school, I took my first trial advocacy courses, and I was hooked. And so
Really?
I wanted everything trials. I loved it. The pace was different, especially compared to, say, like a research lab. And I just really fell in love with it, and I wanted to do as much trial work as I could. And so I graduated from law school in 2008, and I was clerking at a personal injury firm, so I was getting to see as many trials as I could at the time.
Yeah.
But Chicago in 2008, most personal injury cases were settling, and so a year and a half of clerking, I saw no trials. And so I thought, this is interesting. I like the litigation work, but I want to see the inside of a courtroom. And so I ended up working for one of my professors who taught litigation technology. And I ended up working for him thinking I would see a whole bunch of trials from kind of beginning of the trial, not the litigation, but the trial to the end. And I'll do that for like a year or so and then go somewhere else and start practicing traditionally. At the end of that year, we both kind of sat down and thought, this is a really good fit. We should keep doing this. And so we kind of kept doing that for a long time. Eventually, I started up my own shop too. And so that's how I kind of got to where I am, enjoying litigation technology and focusing almost exclusively on trials.
So you're saying that with that attorney, you actually did go to trial. You were successful in your mission of going to trial after trial after trial?
Yeah, so like kind of the first week I started working with him, one of our clients was a personal injury firm, and we did it was a psychiatric malpractice case. We asked for $17 million. We ended up losing, but I learned a lot in the process. And so right away, I got there for before openings is when I first learned anything about the case, and we worked it up in terms of the trial presentation strategy. And get everything ready to present electronically. And I was there from beginning all the way through verdict, and it was just amazing. And that was my decision, just that first experience. I was like, yep, I'm in the right spot. I like doing this.
I'm sort of reacting internally because I hired 3 attorneys for my lit support team when I was at DLA Piper. And they all said they didn't want to. Why were they doing litigation support? They didn't want to set foot in a courtroom. One had even tried it and realized it wasn't for her, but the other 2 knew it. So you're the first person that I know that in law school you figured it out. But we have a question from Ava. What do you mean electronic trial? Do you want to define that?
Sure. So basically, instead of using poster boards or putting a piece of paper under a document camera, we're going to be loading everything up into a laptop or an iPad, depending on the case, and presenting everything electronically. So using monitors or projection screens. to be able to present all the exhibits that way, in contrast to using the traditional paper or poster boards.
It's pretty amazing, Ava. It's a whole different thing, but it's really cool, and the jury loves it. The jury loves being able to see rather than just hear information all day long. I want to encourage you guys, now's the time while I have Mike here, to ask any questions you have regarding trial technology. If you think you might end up doing it, or you're curious about what technology, we're going to go over it today, but I want to encourage questions more so today than usual because Mike's here. Let's take advantage of that. Okay, so Mike, back in the day, because I'm really old, I've been in the legal industry 30 plus years. And when I first learned, I learned trial director. Eventually at a different firm, I learned sanction. I taught a paralegal how to be in the hot seat. Of course, this is just me learning on the fly and teaching, right? And then I taught an associate how to do it, and I taught a partner how to use a document camera, which we're going to talk about. And then I did some PowerPoints for like opening and closing. So now I'm thinking, what trial presentation software are people using in today's trials?
Sure. So I had a kind of a similar progression, although I started on sanction and then I went to trial director. And then today I would say that most people are probably still using trial director, but there is a small and growing number of people that are using OnCue. That's what we've switched over all the people in my office to now, is that we use OnCue for our bigger trials that need a hot seater. The other thing that we're also using, and we're training quite a lot of attorneys and paralegals and other staff on, is TrialPad, which is a trial presentation app that's for the iPad. And so a lot of cases that don't have a budget for a outside hot seater to come in and man the trial, you can have someone from your own trial team come and do it and run it from an iPad. It's relatively user-friendly, and there are some limitations, but it's something that a lot of firms can manage to do. And so I've been able to reach a whole different kind of group of firms and types and sizes of cases by doing that. So those are the two main ones that I'm with these days.
So who makes OnCue?
I think it's called OnCue Tech. So I think the name of the company is the same as
So are they at the same level as trial director and sanction, literally, or is it like less features, or where do you?
No, in terms of features, I definitely think it goes toe to toe in terms of the sizes of the company. Okay. You know, they're a little bit leaner and meaner. They're the upstart.
Yeah.
So they have not as much infrastructure if you're in that regard, but you know, customer service is still there, and it's been really great. But in terms of what I need to do when I get pulled in on a case, and if it's 1,000 exhibits per side or more, and tons of video depositions, it can handle anything that I can throw at it. A trial director can too, but in terms of if you make me pick, and you usually have to pick one. Yeah. Right now, I'm picking OnCue.
Wow. Okay. Cool. See, I already learned that I need to figure out what OnCue is. Not that I'm going to go there. Okay. So Ava's thanking us for answering her question. And Bob Nylander, who teaches in another paralegal program, is saying hello. Julie is saying hello. And Jennifer is confirming that she works, she's a PM at a software company, so she hasn't had an opportunity to prepare for electronic trials. Okay, so we just alluded to iPad apps, but I had a specific question for you today about like, are iPads being used more? You sort of confirmed that now. And then when do you pick an iPad app versus using OnCue, for instance?
The biggest two things that I would use into deciding whether to use an iPad or a laptop-based trial presentation software is the size of the case. So my general rule of thumb is about 300 exhibits or less. That's going to be a pretty good fit for an iPad. Here in Cook County in Chicago, that's kind of the average daily center, like the state court size trial is about 2 weeks, has anywhere between 100 and 300 exhibits. And that's a really good fit for, say, like a personal injury trial or a commercial case that's not in the jumbo category. Anything larger than that, you're going to end up doing a lot of kind of scrolling. It's a touch interface. And so it gets a little bit cumbersome once you have, say, like 500 or even 1,000 exhibits. Not that there aren't people that do that. There are some people that insist on using it, and they do fine. But that's kind of where I normally, if I'm asking a client, tell me about your trial, I'm listening for that kind of ballpark exhibit number. The other thing that I look for is, are there going to be a lot of video impeachments? And so some cases, there's going to be a lot of opposing experts that you might want to impeach, or maybe there's fact witnesses that have statements that they might, or you are worried that they might say something different in court, and you will want to impeach them with their prior video testimony. That's something that the iPads can't really do very well right now. There's some workarounds, but natively, the laptop is really going to be the best tool for that today. And so if you have either one of those two things, a large case file or a lot of video depositions that you're going to need to use, then I'm going to push you towards a laptop. If it's smaller than that and you don't have a lot of video impeachments, then I'll push you towards the iPad, because mainly then you can run it yourself if you have someone on your team or a group of people that can rotate on your trial team to be able to run it in court.
So for those that haven't experienced this yet, video impeachments means you're going to be showing a lot of video clips. Is that basically
That's right.
what you're saying? And so that doesn't bode well for an iPad, right? Because you're going to have to play one after the other. Is that what you're saying?
Right. And so the main situation would be, with some workarounds, we can figure out maybe here are the 5 or 10 key things that this person said in their deposition that we want to make sure that they say again in court, and we get those concessions or admissions. And if they don't say the same thing, then we'll confront them with their prior testimony. But sometimes the witnesses say weird things that you weren't expecting. And so you might need to go somewhere that you weren't expecting and pull up a different portion of the transcript and video on the fly. The iPads can't really do that. The laptops can. And so that's the main reason why the need for video impeaching is kind of a deciding factor when I'm consulting with attorneys.
Wow. Okay. So I wanted to talk about hardware as well today. So back in the day, this is called an Elmo, which when I first heard that name, I'm sure everybody reacts to the name of it. It sounds kind of silly. And yes. So my question to you was, do they still use them? And I went to search for this image to show people what an Elmo is. It's just a brand name for a document camera. I want you to describe how you use it. And then I want you to say, are they still, is it heavily used, or do you use other things instead these days?
Yeah, so what the document camera is, how I explain it to people, is one of two ways. It's either a transparency machine, you just don't need the plastic. So whatever you put down on there, you'll see it. If the person I'm talking to is a little bit younger and might not know what a transparency machine is, I'll just say it's a webcam on a stick that always looks down. And so you put it underneath it is what it's going to show. It still does get used today, and so we also do equipment rentals at the state court here in Chicago. The courtrooms have nothing pre-installed, and so you have to want to use yourself. A federal court's very different, but in state court, it's kind of the Wild West at times, and so we do always bring a document camera with us because it works really great as a safety net. So if there's something new that came up, you found on your, that morning that the opposing expert has said that you just found, and all you have is a printout of it, you can bring it and you can still show it to the jury that way. Or if there's just something you forgot to add to your iPad or to your laptop and you need to be able to show it, you can still put it in there. But most commonly, other than using it as kind of a safety net, a lot of attorneys like to use it to discuss jury instructions or the verdict form at the end of the trial, especially for plaintiffs when they want to fill in the numbers on the blanks on the verdict form. They like to be able to kind of show the jurors as they're writing it in. Oh, really? Here are the marks in the boxes that you need to check. And here you say yes here, you say no there, and then here's how we suggest you fill in the numbers. And then the signatures go at the bottom, that kind of thing.
We didn't do that back in the day. I mean, back in the day, and I'm talking 90s, 2000s. Okay, so for those of you that have never seen one of those before, the thing at the top is a camera. Like you said, it points downward. All you need to do is teach your attorney how to lay a piece of paper on the platform on the bottom, and then there's these zoom buttons. You can sort of see them on the bottom right. All he has to do is zoom in, and it'll show on the screen wherever the screens are in the courtroom. So that's really simple, Simon, right? You just put a page of a document on there, and you zoom in on it. No call outs, no nothing.
Right.
Okay, so you said that they also will put a piece of paper down and write on the piece of paper. Is that what you're
Sure.
saying for that? Oh,
Yep.
interesting. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's other uses too. Like, let's say you have something that has been removed or surgically removed from a person's body that you need to show. You may not want to pass that through a jury box. And so being able to show something, you can kind of move the camera around a little bit so you can show things in 3D without having to have people touch something that you might not want them, or they might not want to touch, or if something's extremely fragile.
Oh,
So
so
that's
physical
another.
items. Yes, that makes sense. I forgot about that. Yep. Okay. All right. So, what other types of hardware, since we're on the subject of hardware, do you like to have these days? I mean, I remember hiring companies to bring in equipment. Do you have like a fast list of things you want to make sure minimally that you have?
Yeah, I mean, we bring in a projector, and we still like to use a big screen for the shape of the courtrooms that we tend to work in. It's just not really going to work to have a large TV in there unless we have multiple TVs. I kind of like to have everyone figuratively and literally looking at the same page. So if we can have one big projection screen that everyone's looking at, I tend to like that. I think the trend in federal court is that there are little monitors sprinkled throughout the jury box and all over the courtroom, so everyone can kind of have their own TV to look at.
Yeah.
But I also feel like you kind of, if you're a really seasoned trial attorney and you're good at making eye contact and establishing a rapport with jurors, kind of the new way that federal courts are set up are going to be really frustrating for you because everyone's buried in their own little screen. But you need to have a way to show everything to everyone. And so those are, core pieces of hardware that I bring. And then you need cables and power cords, everything to make sure everything works. That's all part of it too. And depending on how many people or how many parties are going to be using this equipment, sometimes what will happen is we'll work with a client to provide them with everything they need to present their exhibits electronically. And then, the judge doesn't want to have 4 or 5 sets of equipment in the room. And so all of a sudden we're providing support for 4 or 5 parties.
Wow.
And so the equipment gets, as you scale up, the equipment gets a little bit more complex and less kind of off the shelf and much more specialized, but basically a way of, plugging everybody in and also showing everybody what's being shown. So you need a way to intake signals and a way to push out signals. And that gets a little bit specific in terms of the AV requirements.
Yeah.
And that took me a while to figure out. And that's all kind of stuff we figured out as we went. And as clients' needs kind of pushed what we were capable of doing, we had to go out and then learn more stuff and then learn more stuff. Fortunately, I've always been a kind of guy who likes to look at the back of the TV as much as I like to look at the front of the TV. And so it kind of comes naturally to me, which is, again, another reason why I know I kind of fell into the right spot.
Okay. So I remember electronic courtrooms were just going up. I mean, DOAR was a company that had the very first mock, trial room in New York, and actually William and Mary had an electronic courtroom that they were teaching students in back in the day. So, what percentage, you just mentioned earlier, you might end up in a small court, but do you still have the same percentages that I was used to years ago, where in a particular area you might have a electronic courtroom that you have to reserve, plenty of time ahead, or you're out of luck and you have to bring in your own equipment to a non-wired, I guess I'll call it that. I mean, has it gotten any better with, you're going to have electronic courtrooms?
Yeah, it's gotten a lot better. If your practice is in federal court, I think just about every district has at least one electronic courtroom. Okay. How sophisticated it is, it will depend on how busy that district is. Yeah. But I've been to tiny districts where there's literally the courtroom on the left and the courtroom on the right. And at least one of those, I think at some point there was some sort of initiative where at least one courtroom in every federal courthouse would have electronic exhibit presentation capability. I haven't verified that. I haven't gone through and checked all the courthouses, but that's been my experience that there's at least one. In other state courts that I've been to, smaller venues, it depends. Sometimes they're so small that it's not that difficult for the court system to say buy a projector and put in a relatively a large TV, but what would be a small kind of projection area, and so it's not that complicated. So you can't always go by, well, if this is Chicago, the state court's going to have a whole bunch of stuff already, because in state court in Chicago we don't. Some of the busier collar counties that we go to, sometimes they'll have only a screen that drops down from the ceiling, but you have to bring your own projector and everything else. Other places will have a screen, it's hooked into the audio, and all you have to do is bring your computer, and because they have all the hookups for everything. So it really depends. And the first thing that I would do is, if you're going to a courthouse so you don't have experience, is figure that out. So that way you decide, do you need to bring in a vendor, or is that something that you're going to try to figure out in-house? So it's something that one of those things that attorneys should be thinking about very early on, and they never do. And so I get a lot of calls that way. But,
wow, it's interesting that the way you're describing it seems like it really hasn't changed that much. Like, you still have to think it through and figure out what they do or don't have wherever the trial is going to take place. Here we go. Sarah's saying, we work mostly in Cook County, big venue, low-tech courtrooms. We bring in our own equipment. There you go. So for those of you just joining us, if you have any questions related to trial tech, today is the day, because we're going to be able to get really good answers from Mike. Okay, so I was stalking you to prepare for this, and I found your various social media channels, right? And I want to bring up some, let's switch to this view. This was something you posted earlier this year, that's your hot seat bag. And I was curious, I recognize some of it, not all of it, and I'm curious about the Mac, because, I'm a Mac person now, since 2010. But can you sort of walk through what, I'm assuming one of those is an iPad, maybe?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, so we can start with the iPad. That's in the lower left. It's got a cover on it.
Yeah.
So that is the smaller iPad Pro. That's something that I use. In terms of getting ready for trial, I'll have the trial pad app that I use for trial presentation. And I'll put like a backup of just the exhibits on that, just in case one of my other devices fails. Yeah. So I'll have it in the courtroom. But primarily I use it to put the outlines on there. So the direct or the cross-examination outlines, I'll have on a separate device that kind of sits as if I was just having it printed out, like a printed out copy of it.
Yeah.
So that way that doesn't take up real estate from the other software that I'm looking at on the main computer.
Okay.
On the lower right-hand side, that's my Dell. It's a 13-inch laptop. It's a relatively new one that I got. I love the form factor of it. Probably not the first choice for a lot of people that do what I do, because it doesn't have a number pad, and it's not a 15-inch screen, and it's not kind of the most spec'd out high-end laptop. So I kind of bought that one as more of a proof of concept that it's 2018. You shouldn't have to have basically like a video gaming laptop to be able to present exhibits at a trial.
Yeah.
So that's, I'm trying to prove my point there.
No,
and good. So I run it on that. It's a quad core i7, but it doesn't have it's discrete graphics. And in terms of running OnCue, it runs it flawlessly. So I don't have any problems with what I need to do in terms of hot seating a trial. The MacBook, I have that one because I love it. I do run Windows on it. It doesn't run great on a MacBook, just because it's Windows on a Mac and a MacBook less. Or I guess to add more. Are you
using Parallels or something else?
Parallels. Okay. And so that I also put a backup of the case on that too. So it used to be when I started doing this that like you would have to have, 2 copies of everything for sure, because at some point in the trial, one laptop's going to act funny. You need to switch really quickly.
Yep.
I don't want to, tempt fate here by saying it, but, technology has come a long way, and I don't really find myself in that kind of conundrum as often. And so I still make backups of trial. I have 3 sets of everything, but it's not as much of like a you must do this before you set foot out the door kind of thing. It's there more as kind of like life support. If something crazy happens, I can still get through the morning, and then over lunchtime I can do some real kind of like problem solving and troubleshooting if it comes to that.
Gotcha.
So that's kind of the other two devices that are there. On the top of that screen, on the upper right, that is an external DVD player because none of the devices we buy anymore have DVD drives. And for
why
whatever,
do you need it?
Because I think lawyers are still asking for their video depositions from their videographers on DVD.
Oh my gosh.
Which is frustrating to me because then you're only getting so much resolution, and we have the capability for much more. The videos are already likely being shot at a higher resolution, so but people are creatures of habit, and so sometimes I'll show up to a case and they'll say, here's all the depositions that we have in it, and it'll be 6 DVDs.
Wow.
6 depositions, sometimes there's 3 to 4 discs per, and so it just ends up with like I spend an hour copying DVDs to yeah. And so that's there just because sometimes that happens.
Okay.
Next to that is my kind of my dongle roll or my cable bag.
Yeah.
And so the MacBook has one USB-C connection. The Dell that I have has a handful of USB-Cs, but that's all it has. So I have connections for USB-C, mini DisplayPort, and every other flavor of HDMI and VGA connectors in there, just because I might have everything that I need for my laptop, but then sometimes we have attorneys that, I want to do this direct exam off my own laptop, and it could be, say, like a Lenovo Yoga, which has like not mini DisplayPort, but like micro HDMI or some more mini HDMI, something really weird, and they'll be like, I don't know why you can't just connect this for me, and I'll say, because you have the one and only laptop in the entire market right now that has this type of connector, and you didn't think that part through. But it's usually my fault if I don't have something for it, so I have to carry a lot of cables. Next to that,
go ahead.
Next to that is the remote presenter, the clicker for PowerPoint, and some extra batteries, a pen, some external flash drives. So that way, if I can't connect their laptop to something, I can at least put it on a thumb drive and put it on my laptop. And then power cables, some extra HDMI cables, and that little black box is an external SSD. So
that's cool. I almost have all the cabling stuff and the adapters and everything. I carry it with me because you never know, and I do lend it out to people who don't think ahead as well. I was curious about the clicker/laser pointer. What's the latest and greatest on that these days?
The Logitech is probably the most commonly seen, and it still works great. I mean, basically all you need is a way of advancing and going back. If there's a laser pointer button on there, that's even better. So there's not a ton of advances you need. The one that I like is a Canon branded one. I like that one because it has buttons that map to Keynote as well. So if you have someone that's using Keynote versus PowerPoint, there'll be buttons that map correctly for that user as well. It's becoming a rarer and rarer situation. I feel like Keynote back in like 10 years ago was way ahead of PowerPoint in terms of features and usability. I think PowerPoint's really closed the gap quite a bit by basically copying some of the Keynote's better features.
Of course.
But the gap has narrowed, so most people are still using PowerPoint, mainly because there aren't like single person like drafted PowerPoints anymore. Everything's created with a team, and you have to collaborate, and so it's kind of the lowest common denominator. Everyone has PowerPoint. Not everyone has Keynote.
I remember people choosing Keynote because it was so much cooler specifically in trial. Okay, so Bob is saying that Seattle Federal Court is fully wired with monitors. State courts are a crapshoot.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty much the general kind of consensus. I hope that, well, I don't hope it, but I think that's going to be the general consensus for most places.
All right, I think I'll have my students do a research project and create a guide to tech capability of our 3 county area courts. Interesting. Yeah, because they need to be aware if they're going to end up being, working for litigators who are going to trial. I use the Logitech clicker with green laser. I'm told it's more eye-catching. I haven't heard that. Is that true?
I like green lasers. My favorite lasers are the ones you can buy that you really shouldn't be buying because I think they break some sort of FAA regulation. And so those are super powerful. You only get, I can only find them like getting drop shipped from like China. You can get them on Amazon still sometimes, but they're not like Amazon. They don't ship from Amazon. Amazon.
And are they red or green? Are they green?
There's green ones, red ones. I've seen blue ones as well. They're extremely bright, but I don't like the blue and the red ones. Kind of like a Star Wars thing. You don't want the red or the dark orange colors because that means you're the bad guy.
Yeah,
you want
exactly.
to want to be the good guy. But the green ones, when you can get ones that are bright, I do like green ones much more.
So you're doing good, Bob. I remember learning that when I was first learning about trials is don't use the color red for anything because it's bad. Red is bad. Red is not good. Okay, so let's see. This was interesting because it was on the fly while you were on the job, and you said the attorney asked, "How are you doing that so fast?" It was a trial director, and you're like, "Nope." So this is OnCue, is that right?
Yeah. So what we're looking at is OnCue. That's my laptop. That's the Dell. It's got OnCue on there. And then to the right of that is a monitor. And in front of that is the projector. So like the right is kind of the monitor that I look at, which also is sending the same signal to the projector. And that's what the attorneys and the witness that we were prepping was looking at too. And so we were just doing a run through to give the witness some more comfort in terms of what's it going to be like to try to answer questions off of a screen versus, having everything in a binder in front of him. He's going to have a binder anyway.
I was going to say, they still have the binders, right?
They still do, but I think that if you have a situation where you can not have your head down in a binder, but instead be looking up either at a screen or more able to connect with the jurors, it's better for them. And so that's what we were trying to work on. And he didn't give me a script for the outline ahead of time, but I did have all the exhibits from the exhibit list that we were going to go through. And so I was able to keep up with them almost as fast as if I had spent time preparing for the exam. At least I got lucky for that section of the exam. I was able to keep up with them just as quickly as if I had prepared ahead of time.
Wow.
And so it was great for me. Because a lot of times I do get thrown in at the last minute on trials, and some attorneys are better about getting me outlines ahead of time than others. And so being able to very quickly follow, as long as that attorney understands, if you have an exhibit and a page, we'll find it and we'll get there quickly.
Yeah.
We can get there. And that was proof of concept for me. And so once I kind of had that moment, kind of the unsolicited comment from the attorney, that was enough for me to decide to switch. Because I'd been a long time trial director user, like eight years ago.
Okay, yeah, I wiped out the comments, but the first comment was from somebody saying, "Oh, you finally decided to make the switch for good," Okay, so this one was interesting as I was stalking you. I wanted to talk about this today because you were making an observation that I totally understand, but not enough people talk about this. So for those of you that can't really read it, a great trial team isn't just about amassing the greatest collection of courtroom firepower. It's about one person's strengths. And I love this. It's about one person's strengths filling in over another person's weaknesses. That's true of any team that I build, right? It's about aligning the fronts of the trial with the natural proclivities of your people. I always try to find their strengths. It's about complement. It's about becoming a unit. And you can just elaborate now, Mike.
Yeah, and so for a long time, I would wonder for some of these trials, it seemed like we were spending so much money, not we, but it seems like the parties were spending so much money flying in people from different offices all over the country to go to Eastern District of Texas and kind of all meet there to do a trial. And it never made sense to me, especially since it was like the same people all traveling to all over the country, whereas those firms had people in those cities that they could have pulled from. But these are people that had proven success together. And it wasn't just a matter of superstition. When you look at it, it's some people are more high concept. We want to see what the overall themes and case strategy is. Other people are very much in the detail. That's the person that you want, making sure that we've entered in all the exhibits that we need to enter, all the very meticulous stuff. And there's other people that always have like that different point of view Whereas some of the attorneys that have been going toe to toe with the experts for 5 or 6 years, or however many years you've been litigating it, that other person comes in and says, I don't know why we're arguing about this. This is what I really care about. And so there's people that come in and provide different points of view, but also different skills, things that they're naturally good at, that they want to do. If you I think that's what makes the trial team really work, and that's what makes some trial teams good and other trial teams exceptionally good and special.
Wow.
And so the way I think about it is like, if I have a list of 10 things that all need to get done at the same time, there might be 2 or 3 types of things that I generally pick first. And a different person might pick a different set of 2 or 3 things that they want to do first. Now, if you can get a group of people, 4 or 5 people together, that the things that they want to do cover all 10 things that need to be done right away, you're going to get the best result.
Yeah.
Right? Because everyone's doing what they want to do. They're going to do the best at the things that they enjoy doing. And so it becomes everyone's firing at their highest potential.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's kind of the magic. And you when you take those same people, it's kind of like a basketball team or a football team, and you take those same people and you put them in a different set of other people around them, and they don't perform as well, and the magic's not there anymore. And you wonder why. It's because teams are really important, and not just from a sports perspective, but from a litigation perspective as well. And it doesn't even have to be just in the courtroom. It comes to the prep, right? So like the courtroom stuff is, 9 to 5. That's what's in front of the jury or in front of the judge.
Yeah.
But the prep is hours before that in the morning.
Yep.
Every break and over lunch, and then hours before that afterwards, through dinner, and then into the, late hours of the evening, early morning. And so there are some people that are really great at making sure that the person that's doing the direct tomorrow has everything that they need to be able to succeed and really nail it, so that that person can either get the right amount of sleep, focus on the things that they need to focus on, or establish a rapport with their expert, whatever that may be. And so people can offload different kind of workloads to each other in ways that enable everyone to exceed at the points that they need to. Because there's 24 hours of the day that work needs to be done, and one person can't be at 100% for all 24 hours of the day.
Right. Wow, those are such good observations. Such good observations. I love that. Okay, I want to tout your YouTube channel before I let everybody go. If you have any questions for Mike, now's the time, because there's a delay in the comments. So this is how we met. You followed, you subscribed to my YouTube channel after I started the show, and I was like, who's this guy? And I clicked on you, and I saw you were doing these videos, and then I found out you also teach at the law school. You teach legal tech. But I started watching, as you were, I subscribed right back, right? And I started watching your videos that you were putting out, and they're excellent. And I love that they were short and sweet, like my Fast Tip Friday tutorials I did for a few years. So what made you start doing these short video tutorials?
It's content marketing that I enjoy doing. I love talking about the things that I do. It's why I like teaching. It's just sharing the solutions that I've there, because there isn't a manual for a lot of these things.
Yep.
And so the little things, bits and pieces of knowledge that I happen to have acquired just from experience is something that I wanted to be able to share. And making videos like this was a lot of fun for me. One, we do edit a lot of videos for our trials in terms of work depositions or other kind of content. And so, but that only comes every once in a while. It's not like all day, every day. Not that we edit YouTube videos all day, every day, but it was another way for us to kind of keep our skills sharp, right? And so that way we have material that we can edit and chop up and do it really quickly and pump out material on a relatively tight schedule. We're down to just 1 video a week now because we're getting a little bit busy, but initially I was trying to do 2 to 3 videos a week, with the idea being we need to be good at fast turnaround, because that's what the demands of trial are. So when people call us up, we need to be ready, kind of like samurai for hire, and be able to just go out there and get the job done fast. But the more I did it, the more, anytime I had a client that called me with like a weird issue, I was like, all right, that's going to be the next video. And we're going to make it really specific, really short. My goal, like my target viewer, is someone who has a partner kind of barking at them or yelling at them about how do we solve this problem, get it fixed.
Yeah.
And they're just frantically Googling for a solution. Like, I'm hoping that my video comes up and that they can then have an answer, and it's informative enough that they'll be able to do it. And so to do that, it has to be really specific. It can't be like, here's part 1 of a 7-part series on how to do PowerPoints. Right? I've done those videos before in the past, and they never do well because they're just too broad and you're not reaching anyone. And so for me to reach someone, it's someone has a specific issue. How do I show jury instructions to a jury with PowerPoint? Right? Or maybe that's the issue that they have. Or how do I get the footage from this surveillance camera into my iPad so I can show it to a jury? It's a very specific problem, and hopefully that video is only I try to keep it between 5 and 7 minutes. The last couple have been extra long, and I understand that, and I know that's not great. But I try to keep it really short because you're looking for a specific answer. That's ultimately the goal, and I want to help you find the answer.
I can tell you it's going to work because I did it for 2 years, every Friday for 2 years, and some of mine are as short as 90 seconds even. It's that concise to share that one tip that's going to help them, and you and I have a similar goal of giving people actionable tips they can put into use the next day. So Kathleen is telling us great stuff. So my last question for you is, you do teach at the Chicago Kent Law School, and you teach legal technology. I think you teach some other things too. Litigation technology, sorry. Can you, we had a conversation offline a little bit. I want you to share it with everybody else about your teaching style and your philosophies for teaching. Oh, I forgot, we didn't mention Google Earth. You can throw that in why you teach Google Earth, because I think that's something everybody needs to know.
Yeah, so Google Earth, it's a kind of a weird product now in 2018 because Google is not really updating it or maintaining it anymore. But we still teach it because it's useful. It gives attorneys a very easy way of establishing kind of location, right? And so one of the things that I emphasize for the students, it's a trial advocacy course that I teach that has technology in it, but it's a trial advocacy course first. So it's about storytelling, and every great story starts with, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. There's time and place, even if it's not all that relevant, right? So for example, like the Star Wars universe, does it matter if it's way far in the past or if it's in the future or if it's right now? It doesn't matter, but that's the first thing that they tell you in the movie because time and place matters. And so for a lot of cases, for very practical reasons, you're going to want to show, here's the intersection where these things occurred, or here's where we are at the courthouse, here's where all these other things happen 25 miles away from here. So we like to be able to use tools like that to be able to help tell a story. And we do that in the context of real problems, because the way that I like to teach and the way that I have the benefit of having an trial advocacy course is that we give kids, the students, an actual fact pattern. Whether it's a mini fact pattern just so they can learn some tools to make opening statements in PowerPoint, or whether it's for the midterm or final where we give them a full fact pattern and more exhibits than they'll need, more deposition transcript materials than they'll need, and they have to both figure out how to incorporate them into their presentation, but also make some critical decisions in terms of what information do I not bring up in front of the jury, what information do I focus on, and how do I make those tactical decisions on telling my story in a way that's convincing. And so I like to really be able to give people the tools to tell a story. And I think today, for today's jurors, telling it visually is going to be a really important part of that story. I'm not saying visuals above all else. The story still has to lead, but I think a lot of jurors are going to expect to be able to see something and not just be told a story. So that's one of the...
I mean, the visuals do help. I like that you're saying not just over visuals, but they do help anybody. I use them in teaching as well, and I don't do what you do. But just showing them something, or them having a mouse in their hand, or for teaching, just them having that hands-on experience is just so much more. They're going to retain it better. They're going to remember that they saw that photo, or something like that, right? So the retention is higher.
Well, and different people learn in different ways.
Yep.
And so if you tell someone a set of instructions, or if you have a list that you show them, 6 people will not really remember the list that they're shown, but they'll really remember the list that they heard, and the other 6 will be the other way. I don't know if the numbers are actually that way.
No, I see what
something along those lines, where some people learn by touching, some people learn by listening, some people learn by watching and observing.
Right.
And so we're trying to hit all the members of the jury in that regard.
And our students. So you're doing double duty, trying to think of everything about people. But
yeah, and the other thing is, what I try to do with the course is, we were talking about giving people actionable items that they can do the next day. A lot of the students that are taking my course are law clerks at litigation law firms. And so our goal is to every week give them something that they can go back to their law firms and say, hey, this is what I learned this week. We should try it.
Yeah.
And so we want everything. The things that we teach aren't in the abstract. We're not teaching towards the final.
Right.
There happens to be a final at the end of the course, but we're really trying to teach them skills that they can use once they leave the law school.
I'm the same way. If I didn't have to give a test, I wouldn't, because it's not about the test at the end of the semester.
Exactly.
It's about what they learn. And I don't know if you do this, but I always tell my students to email me when they get that win. So I get emails even years later. I just got one recently saying that she got a job because of her Excel skills that she learned, But being able to save the day, help an attorney with Word or something like that, or Excel, I love that it empowers them, So it seems like we have definitely similar styles. Okay,
For sure.
So I don't see any questions coming in. Usually when the comments are quiet, it's because they're just learning and absorbing. And this was a topic that, certain people are interested in and certain people are curious about. So they've probably just been absorbing. I do want to thank you for saying yes and coming on. And you and I both have this resource to give to people from this point forward. Are you going to be at ILTA by any chance?
I don't think I'm going to be there this year. I think I'm scheduled to be on a trial. I looked at this calendar and I was trying to figure out, I keep seeing ads for it here and there, and I'm like, why am I not going? I think it's because I have a trial that I have to go to, but I can't go there.
Okay.
Unless something happens in the next, couple of days.
Okay, which you could.
Always a possibility. But
so for everybody else, I want to let you know that I am going to be at ILTA this year on Tuesday and Wednesday, and I'd love to meet you in person or give you a hug or see you. So if you're going to be there, let me know, email me or reach out on social media or comment on the show and let me know so I can make sure I end up seeing you. Also, at the beginning of the show, I talked about a position that's available for a newbie in a project manager role at a service provider here in the DC area. So if you are interested in that, let me know as well. They've hired 5 of my previous students, so they're definitely interested in hiring newbies. Mike, you hired a previous student, right?
Yeah, I have one employee who's a previous student, and most of the people that I've hired are former students of mine. I'm not really good at traditional marketing. That's why I like content marketing. I'm not good at the regular sales thing. I'm also not good at the regular HR thing. I've had the pleasure of teaching some really great students, and so I have a really large pool of people to pull from every time I need some help. A lot of the times they end up with other jobs, and so the pool isn't that big.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's a good problem to have. That means I'm doing at least part of my job well if they have a lot of good skills that enable them to work. But for me, it's a great way. I've already been training them for 3 or 4 months. Then, if I'm hiring someone that I've taught,
and because you spend, for me, and I'm sure for you, you spend a semester with them or whatever, right? So you get to know their personalities, their work ethic, things like. There's so much we get from being a professor, an adjunct professor, is sort of on the job. Because I used to hire temp to perm for the same reason, right? So I could have them for 3 months, and I used to joke that they don't become their true selves until about the 3rd month. They can't hold that, fake self for very long. But so I have helped so many students get jobs just by leveraging my network, and then this is just one of them. Okay, let's see here. Kay, I don't know if you know Kay. She's everywhere. She's in LA, but she's saying this was great. And
Thank you.
Jenny is saying she'll see me at ILTA. That's cool. And she's confirming that it's ILTA that she meant. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, Mike, for coming on the show. And you guys, I have another guest next week that I'm excited about. So I will see you guys next Friday, and have a good weekend, everybody. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.